I was born into an affluent and influential family in Dunmore, Ireland. I was the younger of two daughters, and we were the only children our parents had. My sister Eliza was 6 years older than me, so we rarely played together. I vividly remember the day she got married when I was just 12 years old. The entire village seemed to come alive with laughter, singing, and joy, but I felt a profound sadness as she left with her new husband, Mr. Whitmore. Eliza had always been exceptionally kind to me, far more than our mother ever was, and her departure to their new home in Galway left me in tears. My parents had always shown more interest in having sons and neglected me, so I felt quite alone. About a year after Eliza's marriage, a letter arrived from Mr. Whitmore. It conveyed the troubling news that Eliza had fallen ill and wished to return to Dunmore to be with her family. While I was disheartened by her illness, I was also thrilled at the prospect of seeing her again. My father informed me that they would be departing Galway on Sunday and expected to reach Dunmore by Tuesday evening. Tuesday was an agonizingly long day. The hours dragged as I eagerly awaited their arrival. As night fell and the clock ticked towards midnight, I struggled to sleep, straining to hear any sign of them. Suddenly, around 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard a distant noise. I rushed out of my room and down to the living room, excitedly calling to my father. We opened the front door, hoping to see them. We waited in the chilly night, hearing distant cries, but saw no one. There were no lights or figures in sight. We stepped outside, but the night remained empty. Confused and worried, we eventually went back inside, unable to understand where they could be. The next day, a somber man arrived with the devastating news. Eliza had passed away. On Sunday, she had felt unwell, and by Monday, her condition had worsened. On Tuesday, around the same time we were waiting, she had died. This tragic event left a deep scar in my heart, and for the next 2 years, I lived in sorrow, withdrawing from life and social interactions. Mr. Whitmore soon remarried, which only fueled my anger and frustration, feeling as though he had forgotten Eliza far too quickly. By the time I turned 14, I was the sole heir of our wealthy family, and suitors began visiting Dunmore, hoping to court me. I found them unappealing and felt too young for marriage. At 16, my mother took me to Galway, asserting that the city held better prospects for finding a suitable husband. In Galway, I gradually found joy again, meeting friendly people and engaging in lively activities. Although my mother remained focused on finding a husband for me, I relished the newfound happiness in my life. One evening, my mother approached me with news about Lord Glen Ashton. "Do you know Lord Glen Ashton?" she asked. "Oh, yes," I replied. "He's that unattractive old man from Glenbrook." My mother quickly corrected me, saying, "He's not old or ugly. He comes from a very wealthy and prestigious family and has expressed a desire to marry you. He loves you." "Love me?" I questioned. "But he's mistaken. I can't marry someone I don't love." My mother urged me to consider it, emphasizing his good character and how fortunate I was. I spent the night contemplating her words. Although I didn't love Lord Glen Ashton, I did like him. He was engaging and always brought a sense of comfort. Ultimately, I agreed to marry him, and we wed the following spring. Shortly after our wedding, we left Dunmore for Glenbrook. Upon arriving at Glenbrook, I was enchanted by my husband's beautiful home. Situated by a river and surrounded by a garden full of flowers and singing birds, it was idyllic. Lord Glen Ashton introduced me to Martha, the housekeeper, who welcomed me warmly. Martha showed me around, and I began to feel a sense of excitement about our new home. However, my initial happiness was soon overshadowed by an unsettling experience. When Martha took me to my bedroom, I was taken aback by a large black object in the room. At first, I thought it was an old coat without a person inside it, which frightened me. Martha, noticing my distress, revealed that the black coat was an omen of impending misfortune. She recounted that her own encounter with the black coat had preceded a death in the family, specifically Lord Glen Ashton's previous wife. That evening, as we dined, I struggled to shake off the unease. The next day, while exploring the gardens with Lord Glen Ashton, he suddenly warned me never to enter the rooms at the back of the house or the small garden by the back door. He seemed troubled, and his demeanor was a stark contrast to the man I had known before. I was puzzled by this strict prohibition but chose to ignore it, focusing instead on acclimating to my new life. A month later, I encountered another woman in my room, a middle-aged woman in a black coat who was blind. She insisted on staying in my room and demanded to speak with Lord Glen Ashton. When he arrived, he was visibly distressed, and the woman's presence and actions were perplexing. Despite my protests, she physically attacked me and was eventually removed by Lord Glen Ashton. He told me to forget about her, but his fear and secrecy deepened my anxiety. In the days that followed, Lord Glen Ashton became increasingly withdrawn and despondent. His once cheerful demeanor had faded into one of constant sadness. One morning, he proposed that we move to another country, such as France or Spain. I was unsure about leaving Glenbrook and my parents, who were now aging and in poor health. That night, my sleep was disturbed by a nightmare involving the black coat. Waking up to find the blind woman at the end of my bed with a knife, she threatened me, claiming that Lord Glen Ashton had married her first and that I was in grave danger. She insisted that I must leave Glenbrook immediately to avoid being killed. The next morning, I confronted Lord Glen Ashton about the woman's claims. He assured me that she was not his wife and implored me to disregard her warnings. However, Martha later confirmed that the blind woman was indeed a ghost of Lord Glen Ashton's deceased first wife, whose death was shrouded in mystery. Overwhelmed by fear, I decided to leave Glenbrook. I packed my belongings and, with a heavy heart, bid farewell to Martha. I returned to Dunmore, where I found solace in the company of my parents, who, despite their previous neglect, now offered me more warmth. The house was quieter, and my nights were peaceful. Occasionally, my deceased sister would visit in my dreams, assuring me that the blind woman could not reach me in Dunmore. My sister's presence brought me comfort, and I found peace in knowing that the spectre of Glenbrook could not follow me.